Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 256th episode of Real Hawk Talk. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter at HawkBlogger, and we are weeks away from the NFL draft. We are counting down the days to the biggest draft in Seahawks history. I think you could make that argument. This is the biggest draft in Seahawks history. I don't know if they've ever had this much draft capital while being a playoff team. There's a lot that's going on. We have been putting in all sorts of time on this. And the only person I think that is putting in at least as much time as I have been putting into this, if not more, is Jeff Simmons at Real Jeff Simmons on Twitter. Jeffrey, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, man. I'm good. We're 3 weeks out. By this time in 3 weeks, the Seahawks will probably have 2 new players. So that's
crazy to think about, man.
I'm excited. I'm stressed. These last few weeks are the hardest part for me, where just like there's so much smoke. It's hard to know what's real, and everyone's just freaking out at everything that comes out in the media. So this is going to be a fun show. I'm glad I can talk this out with you. Because every morning I wake up these days and I see you're just on one. You're like me. Like I can see how your brain's going. So it's been fun. I love this time of year for football.
Yeah, I generally I've always liked the draft. It's been a little bit less exciting for me when the Seahawks are, when they have 3 picks in the draft and don't pick till the second round, or when they're even picking in the late 20s and the prospects don't exactly line up with the needs. And it's not just that the Seahawks have a lot of draft capital this year. And it's not just that they had a good draft last year. And it's not just that they surprised people, found a quarterback last year. All those things are true. They could have this much draft capital in the 2013 draft, and it wouldn't be that exciting because that draft was ass. It was so bad. And you could have had every pick in that draft pretty much. In fact, the Seahawks have had almost every one of the top 10 players in that draft on their roster at some point because nobody else wanted them. So this is I think a relatively good draft. I think there are interesting players at a lot of positions that you also have potential to upgrade on the team. And man, if we didn't draft our 2 tackles last year, we would be talking a lot about the tackles in this draft. There are tackles for days in this draft, So I am super excited, and I probably haven't been this excited about thinking and obsessing about the Seahawks. Man, it might be like 5-6 years, to be totally honest, and since I've been this interested in what's going to happen and so bought into what the potential could be.
Yeah, I feel it for sure. The way they drafted the last couple of years, I've always loved the draft. That's almost like how I became into football, is just following the league. But the way this team drafted and the way they kind of just every year, they were going to pick someone I've never heard of, and they're going to trade down too much. And it just got very stressful and frustrating. They took Rashad Penny that one year, and Collier, Malik McDowell that year, where me and you were just going crazy about how they handled that year. Last year just reinvigorated me, and the way this season turned out, like that, if you remember just like how we were all thinking at this point last year, we were just like, they can't screw this up. They traded Russell, they got rid of Bobby, and now with all this capital, and yeah, it's been fun to just dive back into this draft class. And I'm like you, I haven't had this much like energy and buzz and like playing on these simulators. And it's not just the 2 picks. There's a lot going on. It's been really fun to just get this ready for the draft. And yeah, my energy feels so much different than typically this time of year.
Want to thank Lawrence Richardson for the super chat donation. Really appreciate that. And if folks haven't already, give the show a like, give the show a 5-star review on whatever you listen to your podcasts on, and go over to patreon.com/hawkblogger. Sign up right now, gets you immediate access to the Slack channel. Conversation is continuous there. And we have some very good patron questions we will get to in just a little bit. the best way to be part of that is to become a patron. Go to patreon.com/hawkblogger, and the proceeds of that go to charity. And guess what? I don't know if everybody knows this. I'm going to be in the same room with John Schneider 1 week before the draft, and be happily donating some of our proceeds from this year and from this show to the causes there. But I gotta say, like, Nathan at Nathan E11 joins the show. Nathan Ernst. Hopefully, let's first test out your audio. Can you say
Hi.
hello, Nathan?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Hey, dude, it worked. You look like a normal person as much as you ever do. I'm loving the bright green this week. A little splash of color is great.
Yep.
Nathan, I need to know, what should I be doing when I see John Schneider literally 1 week before the draft? What do I do? Like, what do you want me to do in that situation?
Oh man. So many things come to mind. I can't pinpoint on any of them. I mean, like, if you can get actual information out of him, I mean, I would be I'm extremely curious to know what he thinks of Jalen Carter. Like, that is the biggest question in this draft, right? Is what our team's thinking about Jalen Carter. So, yeah, I think that's like the biggest deal.
Okay, we can think of some ways around, like, can't quite come directly at it, but you know, there might be some ways to phrase questions around character, around workouts, around yeah, maybe. Jeff, go ahead, Nathan. Go ahead, finish.
No, that's right.
Jeff, if you could ask John Schneider one thing that was not, not just dead on the nose that you wouldn't answer, but if you could ask him one thing, what do you think it would be?
If he's going to draft a center this year.
Yeah.
This is like, or I would just or if I were you, I would just print out all those PFF mock simulators you've done and hand them a list of.
What we're learning here is that the Hawk Talk crew is a subtle bunch.
Subtle like a hammer to the head. Yeah. So I honestly had thought about printing out or writing out a list of players and telling him that for every player he drafts, I will donate another certain amount of money. And it doesn't have to give me any information ahead of time. It's literally like post draft. If any of these players' names get called, then I will buy you a case of Georgetown, your favorite beer. By the way, he's a big fan of Georgetown beers, as am I. So who would be on that list if you were handing that piece of paper? Like, no more than like 5 guys, but like, who would be on that list for you? Nathan, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jalen Carter is the one guy at 5 that would be on my list. I don't know. And then I have a lot of, I mean, we talked about this in the last episode a little bit. It's some of my personal favorites, guys like Dalton Kincaid, Parker Washington. I like a lot of the edges, like Ojolari is pretty fun. Siaki Ika is I like him. Large man. I enjoy that. It's I don't know, like, not to take us off of the point here, but like, it's hard for me and part of it is I just haven't spent as much time on this draft as I have on some drafts, but like, I am having a hard time getting really like pound the table, jump on the table, fired up for like any one guy, because there's just so many options for Seattle that I will be happy with.
I think that's one of the things here. I mean, Jeff, you and I've talked about that. We go through 5 different mock drafts and we're like, yep, that would be cool. Yep, that would be cool. Not even our mock drafts, other people's, mock drafts. So are there like 3 to 5 players where, no question, if these guys got drafted, you would be thrilled? These are the guys who, like, do you have those names?
It's tricky because that number 20 pick, there's like 4. It's not what Nathan was saying. There's like 4 or 5 names where I'd just be like through the roof. But I think I got to have that center from Minnesota, John Michael Schmidt. We've been talking about him since January. And this position has just haunted us. Oh, did we lose Nathan there? So he'd be on there. Will Anderson, I don't know if I need to waste a spot on him. I think that's an obvious one. But with Will Anderson, he's been my favorite player in this whole draft class. I really like Zay Flowers, but again, I think he's the guy I've been excited about most of this process. Smith and Jigba is a guy I've really liked. Mazzy Smith and Ika, I really like both those guys. Julius Brents is a guy I really, really like. And just there's a lot of pass rushers that if they don't end up with an Anderson, there's guys. But I almost want to give them a list of guys. Don't draft these guys. I think that would be a fun list. Donate if they
who comes to mind?
Bijan Robinson. Who would be on that list for me? Maybe Tyree Wilson at this point. Miles Murphy. Miles Murphy would 100% be on that list for me. He is, when I think of like things that this team needs to get better at, like toughness, and he's not that. I need to think of a little more, but there's definitely people on that list.
You've been kind of on a Brian Bruzzy, like has not been high on yours. I don't know if you're don't do it at all, but
he's not on the like don't do it at all, but he's more to me is like more of an athlete than a like kind of get your nose dirty kind of football player. But Brizzy was like the number one recruit in the country. Like there's a lot to like about him. I could convince myself into that guy pretty quick. But like maybe like a Trenton Simpson or Diane Henley. I'm not crazy about those smaller kind of linebackers that can just run. I want this team to get tough again. And so if we can think of like all these finesse kind of players on defense, and like one of the guys I really like is Devon Witherspoon. Devon Witherspoon. I don't know if we'll end up drafting. It probably doesn't make sense to draft him, but I really like guys like that. They're just tough, and I want the team to get back to that. And like the pure athletes that aren't good, tough football players, those don't excite me right now.
Yeah, one of the guys on that list for me is we haven't talked about him much is Andre Carter from out of Army. I'm not a huge fan of his. Some people have him going quite high. I feel like he is super raw and highly likely to be not interesting. I definitely would want to spend a second round pick on that guy, which a lot of people have him going that high. Anyone for you, Nathan, that you're like X out, do not pick besides the running backs?
Yeah, I mean the running backs for sure. Yeah, I mean like Murphy and was it Breezy? Breezy. I don't love either of them, but like it's all relative, right? I mean, there's a spot where I definitely take them. So yeah, I mean it's more like I don't like certain
Will Levis does that.
What's that? I'd take.
How do you guys feel about Will Levis?
I'd be fine if they took Will Levis at 5. I mean, like there are certainly scenarios.
You just killed Brian.
There are scenarios where that leaves them open to a lot of criticism, but like, I mean, if Carter and Anderson are gone and you're at 5, or if you can do a trade down and Levis is a guy that gets down to you somehow, like, yeah, whatever, sure, that's one of the multitude of paths that this draft can take where I will not be furious. Now, if you take Levis over Carter or Anderson, you better be right.
That would be a hard one.
I will tell you guys quickly a couple names that are on my I would just be super excited list. I think like setting aside the Will Andersons of the world, because I think that's somewhat obvious to me. Kalijah Cansey, I've been pretty clear on. John Michael Schmitz is definitely on there. Darnell Washington's on there. Zay Flowers is getting close to being on there. So is Will McDonald.
Not draft list?
On the I would be excited list. These are all this is my excited. I haven't given those yet. And there's one other guy I was trying to remember. I'm forgetting. So those are some of the guys. As far as like the don't draft list, Zach Charbonnet is another guy that I would be really excited about. I don't think that we'll spend the pick that we need to get him, but I really like him as a running back. And I also just wanted to put one of those on there to spite Nathan. So I did want to actually, I want to shift away from the do not draft. I don't have much more to add there, but there's something I wanted to talk about with both of you in particular. And this is related to personnel, which affects all of these choices. And we've talked about it a little bit, that the Seahawks have been shifting away from their 4-3 single high safety look that they had done for so many years under Pete Carroll. The Legion of Boom ran and pretty much ran only, 3 deep essentially looks. Now they've been moving more towards a 3-4. They were always a 4-3 with 3-4 principles. It was always like, they talked about a lot of things, but essentially they had more true defensive ends, and they had, more 4-3 defensive tackles. And then they had 4-3 linebackers. They had a middle linebacker. They had a strong side linebacker. They had a weak side linebacker that had very defined roles. Last year, they moved more clearly to a 3-4, where you had like fewer interior linemen. They were attempting to be more of like a true nose tackle with Al Woods. They had the outside linebackers like Uchenna Nwosu, who were essentially defensive ends, but playing outside linebacker and would play coverage as well, instead of having someone like Carlos Dunlap do that, which was not a good fit. Do we think, like Pete said, hey, we are sticking with this, we are not going back. Do you feel like the moves that they have made this offseason tip the hand at all towards confirming that they are continuing to go in this clear 3-4 direction? Or do you feel like there's the potential that the Seahawks might change their front and spend a little bit more time in what they did before, more of a 4-3 with different types of personnel? Jeff, I'm going to start with you on this one.
It's tricky because they've hinted kind of at both things, which makes me think they might be a little multiple and they might be doing a little bit of both. So Bobby's comments this week were especially interesting, where he talked about that both Bobby and Pete and John, who all commented on it, talked about how a lot of the stuff Bobby did with the Rams is different than what they did before, and it's going to be applicable to his new role. So that makes me think it's not going to be like a full-scale turnover, and they are running the same kind of defense that Raheem Morris and Brandon Staley ran. But Bobby mentioned at the end that they're going to be doing stuff that he's really familiar with and he knows. So I wonder if they're going to be a little more multiple. They're not going to be set in one kind of defense. To be honest, I don't know how confident that makes me, because they had trouble with that last year where I know some of those guys on Seattle Overload talked about how they were playing almost 3 different defenses at times last year. They didn't really have an identity. So I think this draft is going to be it's going to offer a lot of like direction in terms of how they're going with this. Because right now they don't have a nose tackle. That makes you think on one hand that maybe they're going to play Jaron Reed there. Maybe they don't need, but they also talked about bringing back Poona Ford, and Bray Henderson's been hinting at that too. And Pete's comment to him at the end of the year was they played him out of position. His best position is nose tackle, which I didn't expect to see coming. And I heard Jermont Jones on another radio station, it was a Denver station, talk about how the thing that sold him is how much they want him playing 3-tech. And 3-tech is not typically that 3-4 base personnel kind of thing you see. They want it to be like an interior rushing 3-tech, which is more how they used to play things. And I know they mentioned Michael Bennett's role, and every time Seattle brings in a player, they mention Michael Bennett. It's getting a little
God, that's so
eye roll at this point. It's, like how many guys, LJ Collier was the next Michael Bennett. I remember Nathan just crushing that on draft day. So I don't have like a great feel for it right now. I think the draft is really going to tell us. But I get the sense they're going to be multiple, and they're not kind of going with like that old school 3-4 that a lot of us thought they were going to last year.
Yeah, Nathan, this is such a big deal, and I don't think we can know for sure what the answer is. But some of the things I'm looking at are they don't have a true 3-4 nose tackle on the roster right now. Not anyone that makes obvious sense. Uchenna Nwosu, who we've all talked about, makes sense to extend as to get some cap relief. Played well last year. He's a very clear move towards the 3-4. He has less of a logical place in a 4-3. He only has 1 year left on his deal. So if they wanted to leave the door open to say, hey, we're going to try you at Leo, the old Chris Clemens position, but if that doesn't work out, we're done after this year. I'm not seeing the clear commitment to the 3-4 that they couldn't shift back if they wanted to the 4-3. I'm curious what signs you're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all revolves around the nose tackle question, right? They don't have one on the roster, but both of their nose tackles from last year are out there, right? Puna played a couple different spots, but he clearly can play nose. Al Woods is still out there, unless I've missed something. Now the flip side of that is like, even if they want Puna back, they're getting pretty low on cap space here, right? Like the flexibility to sign either of those guys is a little rough. And you know, there's a couple guys in the draft that could play nose probably, but rookie nose tackles is usually a pretty rough experience. Like that's not. I wouldn't want to go in and just be like, yeah, Mazzy Smith, he's our nose tackle, and he's the only one on the roster, and here we go. So like, you know, I mean, that is they almost are it almost feels like they're telegraphing that they're doing something different with how they've neglected that position. But there's still a lot of time. There are still options. You know, maybe they just have a ton of confidence in one of these rookies. Like, you know, you never know. But like, that is the thing that makes me wonder, what exactly are they planning with this defense next year?
Well, so related to this, I spent silly amounts of time this weekend on some different stuff, including creating a draft big board, which we may or may not talk about. And then the other thing is going through Schneider's draft history and breaking it down. Tell me, so this is a list of defensive tackles. This is the full list of defensive tackles that the Seahawks have drafted under John Schneider and Pete Carroll. I want you to tell me if any of these in your mind qualify as a clear nose tackle. Okay. Not just defensive tackle, a nose tackle. Malik McDowell, Jaron Reed, Rasheem Green, Nazir Jones, Jordan Hill, Jay Howard, Quentin Jefferson, Jimmy Staten, DeMarcus Christmas, and Pep Livingston.
Not one.
No.
Yeah.
Now, the flip side of this is the guys who have played nose for them are like Ataba Rubin, Al Woods, like guys that they've just found for free laying around, basically, right? Like, so, I mean, yeah, I don't think this is something they're going to address for the draft, although it would not be weird to see them go against the grain here, considering that the defense has evolved over the last couple of years. So a lot of those years we're drafting for a pretty different defensive line. And even if they don't draft a nose, like, you never know who will be cap casualties, or if they can get, you know, Al Woods or one of these guys back. Like, I think it's a really glaring hole that could be indicative of something, but they're also just, I think, I wouldn't, if they are still dedicated to this defense, I doubt they're panicking right now about the nose situation.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. The point there is, it would be the most clear. If they draft Will Anderson, that is not a indication that they're going to one way or another. If they draft Jalen Carter, it's not an indication they're going one way or another. If they draft Siaki Ika, if they draft Mazzy Smith, that is a pretty clear indication of a direction that they're going defensively. Siaki Ika, I don't think really is a logical fit in a 4-3 defense, the way that they play it. Now, maybe there's others that would say differently, but that's kind of how I'm looking at it. Also, given the little amount that the Seahawks have spent in draft capital and in free agent money on this position, it feels like Siaki Ika and Mazzy Smith are pretty unlikely choices by this team. At least it'd be a pretty big deviation from what they've done. I think you're probably more looking at guys like Cameron Young that you might get in the 5th round or later at that nose tackle position, or some of the other guys. And there's definitely some guys on that list. I want to say Coburn from Texas, but there's a few guys that could be on that list.
Jared Clark.
Yeah, Jared Clark from Coastal Carolina. So I don't know. Does that sound right to you? Like, do we feel like most likely we should be giving up on the Siaki Ika, Mazzy Smith fits for this team?
They're just in a unique, like, I don't think we can look at any of their off seasons in the past and say they were in this situation. So like, I don't know that the historicals here are really helpful. They're interesting.
I agree with
They're
that.
interesting for sure.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I
go
agree
ahead.
with Nathan. I was going to say I totally agree. I think their past just was a totally different defense, and if they're running the defense they're planning to run, and we don't know what that is, but if it's the one from they talked about the Rams and that more of a classic 3-4 look, that position is going to be prioritized a little bit differently. The one thing they have had success with is finding defensive tackles in general for cheap. Even how they found Al Woods in the first place, he was basically a scrap heap signing. He was like a 1 year, probably $2 million player, and they've had Tony McDaniel and guys like that. So the one thing this team has done well is find defensive tackles on the cheap, but they're in a spot now where they've painted themselves in a corner. So I think they might have, and that's when they have typically in the past overdrafted players. So Masley Smith is a tough one to fit in because it's probably got to either he's got to slip to 37 or an Ika, like maybe it's a second round pick, but there's a big opportunity cost to that because you're giving up. We've talked about how many players we like in that range. So it's a really interesting spot because you said they can't just go sign a free agent right now. They're basically tapped out and they're going to have to create money somehow. So I don't know if historical like precedent really factors in here for the money reason. And they've kind of painted themselves in a corner. So they might, and we've seen what happens when they do that.
I get that. I see this one a little differently. I do think history has been a good guide for the Seahawks, even in this situation. And maybe it's more general, but two things that have been very consistent. They have not valued the middle of the offensive line, and they have not valued like the run stuffing on the defensive line. They've tried to go cheap in both of those places. And it would be a change of the way that they value a position or like what your skill set is to go in the second round for a run stuffer. That feels pretty different than the way that they've valued that capability before. So I do think historicals play a role here. I agree with what you both are saying, though. There's a specific type of nose tackle that we've never needed before, and they might be harder to come by, and that might push the premium. My guess as I looked through this was that even though I'd be pretty excited if nose tackle was an early pick and they really got thick in the middle of the line. I don't think Jarran Reed is someone I would feel at all comfortable with playing nose tackle in a 3-4 at all. Oh, no. So I don't know. Even though I'm excited about that, my general conclusion is I think that they will wait on that. I think it's less likely they're going to go in that position. The other thing that I wanted to bring up for both of you here is, as I was looking through historicals, a couple other things came up. So you may have already seen me put this out, but any guesses really quickly on what is the position that the Seahawks have spent the most first-round picks on?
Offensive tackle?
Correct.
Okay.
I included Jermaine Ifedi in this list. That could be questionable since he played guard in his first year, but ended up at right tackle. I also include James Carpenter in this because he played his full first year as right tackle before.
And they were both drafted as tackles. Yeah.
That was my read.
Yeah.
So they spent 4 first-round picks: Charles Cross, Jermaine Ifedi, James Carpenter, Russell Okung. They've also spent a second-round pick on Justin Britt. They spent a third-round pick on Abraham Lucas. So this has been the position that they spend the most draft capital on. They brought in Dawan Jones. They brought in a couple of other tackles for top 30 visits. At least 2 of those guys, not Dawan Jones, actually profile as guards. So is there any part of you that thinks that they will go back to the well for tackle in the first couple of rounds of this draft? Jeff, I see you shaking your head.
No, I don't think so. When I studied their roster, and unless they just have someone graded so highly, they can't. One of the things they have 4 offensive tackles on rookie contracts right now. So they just don't need it. They have Curhan and they have Stone Forsythe. And obviously, I don't know how good those guys are, but all 4 of them are on rookie contracts, and 2 of them make total sense as backup tackles. But they just have so many needs elsewhere. To me, listen, they love Dawan Jones and they want to kick one of those guys inside. I get it. But like, to me, I can't see it. I really can't. It just seems like a Well, we've seen how they've abused the safety position, so maybe that's a pattern. But I think it would be a stupid waste of resources, to be honest.
Nathan, I assume you'll speak up if you feel differently.
They've looked at a lot of tackles, though.
They have.
They have.
Those top 30 visits are like, for them to spend that many of them on a position. But I don't know. I wonder how many of these guys. I mean, will they draft a tackle, a player who played tackle in college? I think it's very possible. Will that player play tackle in the Seahawks?
Yeah,
I think much less likely.
Good. So that leads me into this next piece, which is we've also talked a lot about guard and a lot about center. We've even, Jeff, you and I, we've done one of our favorite mock drafts was, you know what? What we've got, we don't like. We're going to trade back, and we are going to get Pete Skoronski. We're going to shift him to right guard. Then we're going to draft John Michael Schmidt, and we are going to have the best fucking offensive line we've had in a long time, and it's going to be great. And I think you and I love that as a alternate to reaching for like Tyree Wilson or something like that. Well, I went back and looked. The earliest round that the Seahawks have, earliest pick the Seahawks have spent on guard is the third round. They have not drafted a guard before the third round. Damian Lewis, Reed Odiombo, and John Moffitt. Those are their 3 third-round guards. They've not spent a first-round pick. They've not spent a second-round pick.
Odiombo was a left tackle, Boise.
He was. They specifically drafted him to play guard. At least
but
that was.
I think there's a theme here, right? Like,
yes.
What is the most drafted position in the first round? Offensive tackle, kinda, right? Like Carpenter, Affetti, right? And then you have Britt. Britt was drafted as an offensive. Like, it's weird to think of Britt as an offensive tackle.
Posick was drafted as a tackle too.
Posick, yeah. I mean, at the very least, they weren't immediately putting him at center, right? Like,
no, they put him at right tackle in year one. That was a Tom Cable evaluation right there.
Yeah. Now that's the other thing. Like, the Cable years are gone, so who knows how much of that holds up. But like, this is the thing that they like to do is draft tackles and see where they can play them on the line.
I think that's a fair piece to bring up. My recollection, I see that a little differently. I think that they drafted James Carpenter to be a tackle, and he didn't work out. I think they drafted Jermaine Affetti to eventually be a tackle, and he ended up staying there. I think Justin Britt, they drafted to be a tackle. He started, people don't remember this, he was the starting right tackle for the 2014 Super Bowl team. Like, so I think that they intend for those players to play tackle. I think we're talking about now specifically drafting a guard, someone to play guard. And I think those were a lot of triage that was going on in those situations because, frankly, I don't think they got the value that they were looking for.
And he ended up staying there is like the perfect tagline for Jermaine Affetti. And he ended up staying there, the Jermaine Affetti story.
And he's still getting paid and getting free agent deals. Like, that guy,
he ended up staying there.
It's crazy. So, I mean, you look at center. My recollection was that Posick was drafted as a potential center that played a lot of guard. You're right that in training camp they were playing him at right tackle as well that year. He was a center, in that regard. So I was just looking at even who you could classify as a center that they've drafted. He's the only guy before the 6th round. The other guys were Joey Hunt and Christian Sokoli.
You got to grill John on this.
That's a fair point. Like, I can ask, like, how do you value the center position? He won't give me anything. I guarantee it. But
he's told you how he values the center position.
Yeah. 13 drafts.
I guess my question is, how do you come to that as a conclusion for your value to that position?
Can you change your evaluations?
And I mean, my point here is this is not like a right or wrong thing. It is like, do we really think that John Schneider would be willing to spend the 8th pick, if that's what it was, on a tackle to move to guard? Do we really believe that he would spend the 20th pick, which is what he might have to get a center that he wants in John Michael Schmidt? Do we really believe either of those things is in the realm of possibilities?
I think the 20th pick, to kind of somewhat answer your question here, is the most interesting pick in this draft, right? Like 5 is all about what falls to you, and you just kind of like something good is going to be there, whether it's Anderson, Carter, a trade back, right? Like a quarterback you actually like, and that's something they want to do. So 5 is just like, yeah, man, we're gonna hang out for 4 picks and do the cool thing when it presents itself. But 20 is kind of a weird pick. Like maybe JSN is there or something that like that, right? And like he's a clear player you take at 20. But everything else for them feels forced, right? If you take Kincaid or Miles Murphy, like tight ends at 20, I mean, yeah, I get it, but like also, no. And then like Matthew Smith, like, boy, that's high. Again, I get it, but like that's high. Like DeJuan Jones, like I love him as a right tackle, and I'll be super interested to see what he can do as a guard, right? Or like, are you moving Abe Lucas? So like everything at 20, like I think 20 is gonna be really indicative of how they see the team. And what they're trying to build, because I don't think there's any like natural fit there outside of something stupid happening like Tyree Wilson or JSN or somebody falls and then you just kind of do the obvious thing.
Jeff, I can't see him doing it at the top 10. I want to believe that that's a possibility. The 20th pick on John Michael Schmidt, I do feel for some reason, it might just because I'm super stupid and stubborn, but I feel like that's possible. Where are you on those two things?
I'm very similar. I think the Skoronski thing is more me and you than something the Seahawks can do. I think the Seahawks do value positions. We saw offensive tackle. We've seen, and you put it out last week, where they've drafted certain positions. I think they're very set on those ways. I do think that things have changed in the last year, and we saw them kind of break character last year. And I think a big impact has been Jody Allen and kind of reevaluating their draft process. Like they drafted 2 pass protecting air raid tackles that couldn't run block. That was way out of character for the Seahawks.
It's a great point.
But they followed up. They drafted a running back, so they still have some of their characteristics. Kenneth Walker still managed his way in there, and Boye Mafe was a classic John Schneider pick. But I think the guard thing is hard to see. I think that's something that me and you would come up with because we see the position of strength. John is not typically drafted like that. He typically tries to fill holes rather than build one position, and I can't see him picking a guard there. I think that's out of the Schmitz thing is interesting because of just the context of that position. They're light there on the roster. They've been getting killed there for years. And there was indications that they liked Tyler Linderbaum last year. John Boyle did that article last year about the inside the draft room stuff. And they were actually there were some reports from like Tony Pauline at the time. They were trying to move out of the draft. They're fiercely trying to trade down. And Boyle wrote that article after. And they were actually looking to trade up. It was for Arnold Ebiketie. And one of the other guys that apparently they liked that as a possibility was Linderbaum, who's a center. So that was to me that maybe things are shifting there a little bit. And the way Schmitz's stock has changed, I know there were some reports from one of the media guys that they liked Schmitz a lot, and the Seahawks are really high on him. And he's a Senior Bowl Jim Nagy guy. And I thought like the second round was his sweet spot. But the more this process has gone along, the Giants and the Bills are sitting there, and there's a lot of ties to Schmitz there. It's never good to tie yourself to one player where you might overdraft him because that's where you make mistakes typically. But I can just see the Seahawks just seeing center as such a big internal need. They have Evan Brown on the roster, and Joey Hunt is like a practice squad guy. But I think they're telling you that they want to upgrade center. And you saw it with Blight last year, how much it hurt the passing game. And I can see them just overvaluing him. And listen, he's one of my favorite guys. I would not be upset, but I could see them kind of overcompensating there to make up for him.
And this is another area where I think the historicals are like the weakest in terms of predictive value as they've ever been, right? Like this is not a Tom Cable team anymore, and it hasn't been for years, right? But like I think Andy Dickerson should have earned a lot of influence with this team, with what he's been able to do with rookie tackles and just generally, and I think he's been promoted once already, so they clearly value him. And so who knows what he really wants right now. I mean, he comes from a Rams team where they had Austin Blythe, and then they brought in Austin Blythe. So maybe, they're pretty aligned there in how they've been doing things historically at this position, but who knows? Like it would not be surprising if there was a big shift here, and that like it's pretty clearly like, well, yeah, you have a different offensive line coach who's doing really well and should be pretty respected.
Andy Dickerson is my favorite Seahawks assistant coach, and it's not close. It's not close. I think that guy is. I really like what he's done.
What about Greg Olsen, the slick back hair?
Dirtbag Greg Olsen.
Yeah, he's certainly fun in the pictures. You never quite know where he's looking. But
are we sure that Greg Olsen isn't just like a time traveling Aaron Rodgers? Like he's actually the like 59-year-old version of Aaron Rodgers.
Does he have healing crystals? I don't know. We'll have to find out.
Maybe that's something you can ask John.
Okay, I will. That is actually a fair question. I will make sure. I will let you know.
You gonna get a selfie with John?
Oh yeah, for sure. I will not be with a quarterback most likely when I take it, but I'm happy to do that.
Oh! I know what I want you to talk to John about.
Okay.
I finally remembered. Can you talk to him about why Andy Reid is the best coach in the NFL? Just get his thoughts about like what really separates him from the pack.
How about this? How about I will dial your number and let you ask him that question, just like I let you talk to your favorite safety of all Seahawks history, Tedrick Thompson.
I would legit be too shell shocked to say anything.
John might agree. John might agree with
seen...
Nathan. I think he was with Andy Reid in Green Bay.
Oh,
yeah. He has Andy Reid background. I wish you all could have experienced Nathan talking to Tedrick Thompson and how uncomfortable he was. It was awesome.
I was very polite. Awesome. I was very nice.
And then also when I had John Schneider call Evan, that was also quite fun. Evan was completely inappropriate. Like literally it was like trying to convince him about his salary cap knowledge to get a job with the Seahawks. I think he's burned that bridge since, but anyway, it was pretty funny. How are you guys time wise? If we go a little bit past the hour, are you good? Yeah. Okay. I want to get to Patreon questions, but I want to go a little bit further on some of these historicals, just because I think it's a lens we haven't talked about yet, and I think it's been really fascinating to hear your perspectives on which of these matter and which of them don't. So I'm going to stick on offense with two other positions that we've talked about as potentially interesting in early rounds. One of them is tight end, and one of them is receiver. And receiver is either the second or third most valued position by the Seahawks in terms of draft capital. Defensive end is the second after offensive tackle, and then it's receiver. And if you look at, they've spent 4 second-round picks on receivers: Eskridge, Metcalf, Paul Richardson, and Golden Tate. That's a lot. 4 out of 12 drafts or whatever it is. Like it's a lot. They've also spent 2 third-round picks: Amaro Darboh and Tyler Lockett. For what it's worth, every player they've drafted after the 3rd round at receiver has not really worked out. Their hit rate on the first 2, the 2nd and 3rd round has been decent. Their hit rate below that, we're talking about Gary Jennings, Kevin Norwood, Chris Harper, Chris Durham, Freddie Swain, Bo Melton, Derek Young's still there. Who knows? John Ursua, David Moore, who had a couple good years, and Kenny Lawler. There's like some stinkers there. When you go to tight end, you're looking at the earliest they've picked a tight end. The earliest is the 3rd round, Nick Vannett. They've only used 1 pick before the 4th round on a tight end. The other 2 in the 4th round are Colby Parkinson and Will Dissly. They spent 4th round picks on. Either of those make you guys feel either less confident that they will pick one of these tight ends in the first 2 rounds, or more confident that they're going to go receiver maybe in the 1st round, or if not the 1st round, the 2nd round. They
did trade a lot for Jimmy Graham once upon a time.
Fair.
That probably factors in there, right?
Yep.
The thing that's really hard for me with receiver though is like last year was so crazy that I don't know what to expect, right? Like I don't think it's crazy to think that JSN could get to them at 20. I also don't think it's crazy that JSN goes like 7 or 8. And then Zay Flower goes 12, and like, yeah, Josh Downs goes 16, and then Quentin Johnson, who is another guy that's always up in the top 15, right? Like, that was what last year felt like, is all these guys where you're like, oh man, yeah, like if they could get him with that like early second round pick, that'd be pretty cool. Nope, sorry. When 15, or the Penn State guy, right, is the one that was a big surprise. I liked him a lot, but still. So like, I think a receiver is definitely in play at 20, but it depends on whether they're going to be picking the first or second receiver, or like the sixth receiver off the board at that point.
Yeah, and this is a little bit of a different receiver class. One of the things we've seen in the draft the last 2 or 3 years is not just the front end guys, like Nathan said, and which last year was incredible. You had all these guys, and they almost all of them hit. They all went in a row last year. But you had guys, it just was like John's talked about numbers at certain positions. There's been a ton of numbers of receivers in the last couple of drafts. And with the way college football is going, it makes sense. There's so many offenses. And it's been easier to transition than it was probably 10, 12 years ago when there was less college concepts in the NFL. This year is a different class where there's those guys that Nathan mentioned, but then once you get to like the typical second round where there would be loads of numbers, there's a guy, Josh Downs, who Derek really, really likes. And after him, it's not a great receiver class. That's sort of the weakness. If you talk to like personnel guys, it's really pick and choose who you like, but you're looking at Jalen Hyatt and Nate Dell, who's really, really small and explosive, and Michael Wilson, who didn't really produce, and Cedric Tillman. Those guys are not really round 2 guys. Those are probably round 3 guys, and it's really pick your flavor. So one of the things I've just figured out when I started studying this draft is 20 seemed to be a pivot point where there's like, initially I just thought, okay, they're going to go heavy defense. It made sense. Their defense sucked last year. They're pretty good on offense. But the more I started studying this draft, 20 seemed to be sort of the pivot pot where, okay, maybe some of the defensive ends you want aren't there. Or maybe if you don't get Jalen Carter early, unless you want Cansey, there's no real defensive line. So to me, the obvious pivot there is you can get the best of something else. And that was either tight end or receiver. And so to me, all these mock drafts, you keep seeing Seattle get receiver. It's kind of the way this draft class works. That 20 range is where defensive line are gone. You don't want to take a linebacker there. The corners don't go in the teams. Where's the best value? It's the receiver spot. So if there's someone they really like, when Nathan's right, though, they're like Zay Flowers was in New England today, and he's a guy at Boston College. He fits New England. Like JSN's a guy who could go to Houston at 12, and all of a sudden Green Bay could take a receiver. Quentin Johnson's kind of a weird fit for Seattle, and what they really need is more of a slot guy. He would be kind of a weird fit. So that's where maybe they do go tight end, because it really depends with tight end, I think, what they think of Noah Fant long term. He's a guy, if you need a clear cap room, you draft a tight end there, you can trade Noah Fant for a 5th round pick, and there's your $7 million to go sign the rest of your defensive line. So I think that's a big evaluation for them. Historically, because this draft's so deep, the way Seattle typically would draft is they'd wait on tight end, and maybe they take one of those in day 2 or maybe day 3, probably round 3 or something. And maybe if there's a big group of them, and that's what this group is known for. There's like 8 tight ends going in the top 70 of all these top 100 lists. So I think tight end at 20 is probably less likely unless they have a guy just graded super, super high. But I really think receiver, because if you wait until like the 50s or whatever, every time we do these mock drafts, unless Josh Downs is there, it's kind of a drop off, and you're reaching on like a really small guy. So I think they're going to break tendency on that.
This is, I don't know if I even consider that breaking tendency, because the point is, this is a position they've drafted high, and maybe not first round, but they've spent a lot of draft capital on this position, and they've drafted, let's see, they have drafted 16 wide receivers, more than any other position group in their time, 16. So I think you're absolutely right, Jeff. And there's 2 tendencies that they have that make me ask you guys one other question related to this, which is Schneider has had a tendency in the past to, when there's a position group that they value that has a small number of players that they like, they will take the best of those early, knowing that they'll get 2nd or 3rd or 4th or 5th on their list of another position that they consider deep. I think this is a super flawed approach, that I don't love. Like, I think you should get the best player, and I think they've overweighted that. I get the idea, but like, get the most impactful player, and if you don't get your receiver this year, so be it. But it is a tendency. The question is, have we underestimated the potential that they will trade back and with their first pick draft be the team that drafts a receiver, drafts JSN at 10 or 9 or something? Is that like, do you think that is more likely than them drafting Skoronski at 9 or 10?
I think so.
I do.
I think so. Yeah. I would personally at least like that better if they trade down 8, 9, 10 and draft JSN over Skoronski. Like, I think that makes more sense, especially with how the rest of the draft plays out between what we just talked about, what Jeff was just talking about with receiver, and like, you know, the Avilas and Jacob Jingleheimer, that guy, and you know, Dewan, some of these convert types that maybe you can slide in from tackle. Like, I think that makes a lot more sense to me.
Jeff, I don't like it. I know you're a big JSN guy. I don't like it, but it does feel to me like more likely than like a Skoronski kind of move.
Yeah, I do think so too. I just think Seattle has receiver as a premium position. And you look at their roster now, I know all the mock drafters are starting to talk about this now, but receiver is a big organizational need. Tyler Lockett's turning 31 this year, I believe, or 30. And you saw what happened, and we talk about this all the time, but when he didn't play in that Chiefs game last year, their passing game went to shit. And you look at the way their cap numbers are too. They're going next year. They're both pretty good value this year, but next year they both skyrocket over 23 million. And so there really is a big need to just put in a rookie contract in this valuation. JSN's a guy I really like. It depends on his medical grade, obviously, because he didn't really play this year. But I can see the Seahawks just like, he's got a very clean character. Ohio State receivers have just crushed it the last few years. So he's one of the cleaner evaluations of this whole draft. And the best part about him is he's exactly what they don't have. He's a slot guy. He's like a cheat code for a quarterback. And we saw that Geno didn't have that. And I know a lot of like analytics people, just the film guys, have just said Seattle needs that to open up the rest of their offense.
They do.
So yeah, it's not, I think defensive end or whatever is probably the best, but listen, if they trade down and get JSN and then get another second round pick, I'm pretty pumped up.
Have you guys talked about the scenario you laid out, Jeff, where they take a tight end at 20 and then trade Fant and open up cap space and use that for a defensive tackle? That almost seems like too obvious, right?
Yeah, we have talked about it a decent amount, and that you know, you don't have to just let go of Fant. There potentially is a trade value for him. You don't even know. It might be very low. It might be conditional pick, but he's not a crap player. So you could get something in return for him. They might try to do that on draft day, and they might just be seeing what comes to them. I admit that what they've spent draft capital wise on tight end and what they have in the room right now at tight end makes me a little less convinced that they're going to be that clever. But I don't think it's the worst idea. I really don't. I mean, I don't know if 20, like, there's a lot of, when I did my grades of players, and everyone should totally dismiss my grades because what the hell do I know? But when I did that and then I went through and drafted just based on my grades, I was taking Michael Mayer at 20, like pretty much every time. Like that was the highest value player at that position that I had most confidence in turning into a good player for them. I think there's case to be made for doing exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, they open up $8 million in cap.
Yeah,
trade Fant.
Yeah,
so that is more than enough to bring back. I mean, you can bring back Puna and Woods, I think, pretty easily with that amount of space.
I don't want to bring them back, though. I'm sorry.
Huh?
I don't want to bring them back.
I mean, they're your best shots for this year. I think they're the best players out there.
Shelby Harris.
What's that?
Shelby Harris too.
Yeah.
Quinn Jefferson signed today.
Harris isn't going to play nose for you though.
No.
No. Okay, we are I am not going to go through defensive player history there, but I will make one quick point. We've talked about cornerback also as maybe that's a position, whether it's Witherspoon or Christian Gonzalez or something like that. The reality is the Seahawks have drafted actually the second most cornerbacks. They've drafted 15 cornerbacks. They've drafted 16 receivers, 15 corners. And the earliest they have ever used a pick on a corner is Shaquille Griffin in the 3rd round. And that's the only one before the 4th round. So they've drafted 14 guys from the 4th round on to expect that they're going to trade back and take a top 10 pick on a corner. Also knowing that they have Trey Brown on the roster and Michael Jackson and Kobe Bryant and now Julian Love. I think that is fan talk. I get it. I don't think that really matches the way the Seahawks have thought about that position. It would be a massive departure from the way that they've approached it. Doesn't mean it's the wrong thing to do, but it would be a big break from their past.
And there will just be too many alternatives. Like last year, let's say something weird happens and both Sauce Gardner and Charles Cross are sitting on the board for Seattle. They're still taking Cross, even though Gardner is probably going to be the better player, and they very likely knew that, right? But like again, they just have that confidence in their ability to go find Tariq Woolen way down the draft, and so they're going to take the other position. So like, yeah, every year we get into this conversation about like, oh, this cornerback, oh, it could be the year. It's not going to be the year. There's just it'd be very strange for them to do that.
You can't argue with their track record there.
Right.
I mean, like Shaquille Griffin, Kobe Bryant, Trey Brown, Ugo Amadi, Walter Thurman, Tariq Woolen, Trey Flowers, like him or not, has been a starter. Ty Smith, not great. Thorold Simon did start for a while. Richard Sherman, Mike Tyson, who was a safety they tried to play at corner, never made it. Eric Pinkins, same thing. Jeremy Lane, Byron Maxwell, and Ryan Murphy. Like, of 15 players, that hit rate's like 60% or higher. Like, and they're only drafting from the 4th round on pretty much. So it's hard to argue with their approach to that position. And if I'm them, I'm not feeling like, oh man, we've got this wrong so many times. We're going to have to really spend the right draft pick on this. So let's do this. Let's shift to some Patreon questions because we've already taken an hour. I have so many more questions, and I have things that if we don't get to here, I hope you guys can stay on. If not, I will just talk about them myself because I don't mind talking to myself. But first question here is from Amani Waddell. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correct. Lee. Let's start with Nathan. The question is QB, defender, or trade down. Where on that roulette wheel do you bet your life savings on and why? I assume we are talking about the number 5 pick.
On what they will do, what they will do?
What they will do.
I don't know. I would not. I choose not to.
You got to make a bet. You got to put it down.
Defender, I guess, but like
Defender.
I really don't know. I mean, I think in order of likelihood, it's I don't know what to do between defender and trade down. But I don't think QB is going to be far behind either one, so I really don't know.
Jeff, are you enough of a golf fan to have a take on who's going to win the Masters?
Yeah.
Okay, this comes from Jared Brandt, friend of the show. Who's going to win the Masters?
I bet on John Rahm.
I
bet on John Rahm. Yeah, if I had to pick someone, I have a couple bets out there, and Rahm had really good odds, so it wasn't the best. Yeah, it's kind of an obvious pick. He was like the third best odds, but yeah, that's who I picked going into the week. There's a couple other guys I like. Schauffele's a guy I like.
Xander.
He's been around. He's been around that top 10 for a couple years now, but if I had to pick, it would be Rahm.
Did Joel Damon qualify? He's a friend of the show. I don't know. I like Joel Damon, man. That guy's funny. All right. EM asks, this is for you, Nathan. What order do you think JS values the top 4 quarterbacks? And is there any he wouldn't consider at 5? So rank them based on how do you think John Schneider, not how you, but how John Schneider values those 4 quarterbacks.
Okay, so I think it's probably Richardson, Levi's, Stroud, Young. I
That's
think
how you think. Okay. Jeff, do you agree with that? Do you think that's how the Seahawks rate the quarterbacks?
I have no idea. But I
not
think
the Seahawks. I think this is you got to be specific here because I don't know if I'd answer the same way if you said Seahawks or Pete or like. But I think John gets excited for the big boys.
Okay, that's why I took Russell.
I'll go.
That's the weird thing though. Like, yeah, but he let himself be bullied by Pete into waiting until the 3rd round, so didn't love him that much.
And Andy Dalton, he got bullied by Pete.
Yeah. All right, Jeff, how about you?
I'll go Stroud, Richardson, Young, Levis.
Yeah, I think this is a great question, by the way. I think it is. I think it is Stroud. I think it might be Stroud, Levis, Young, Richardson.
That's scary.
That's how I think.
But so Russ is a very short man. We all know, but absolute cannon for an arm athlete, right? Like those two are still true. Like he liked Charlie Whitehurst, who had a big arm, big QB. He wanted Mahomes. He wanted Josh Allen. Like I kind of think Young, for a couple of reasons, has got to be at least the last. Like whatever you want to do with the other ones, especially Levis and Richardson. I don't know how he might split those, and maybe he just thinks Stroud is just an overall better package, better player, polished, and all that. But like, yeah, I think John pretty clearly has a general type here at quarterback.
I think it's a fair point. I'm putting some weight on the fact that I think they've learned very clearly and valued differently now quarterback's ability to process what's going on and actually be an X's and O's person. And people talk about precision and accuracy, and I think that stuff's fine. But I'm talking about like actually mastering the position and being a leader on the field for where to go and to run the offense. And so Anthony Richardson for me, I think is 4 out of 4 in that category. I haven't seen any evidence of him being someone who's like clearly ready to process the position well. Levis to me is more like the athlete that fits the category you're talking about, where I think he's actually shown some of those things and he's demonstrated more of it on the field. So I think Levis gets a little bit discounted from an athletic situation because Richardson's such an outlier, but this is all conjecture. I have no real idea. That's just my guess.
Maybe that's what you ask.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. Nick S asks, Jeff, are there any players in this draft that you've recently become really high on? Maybe players that you didn't like to start with, but now you've gotten excited about.
I don't want to say this guy's last name, but you brought him up a couple times. That Tuli from USC.
Oh,
how do you say his last name?
Poto? I don't have it in front of me, but yes, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, he was a guy like I didn't spend a lot of time on. I was trying to find the edge rushers and defensive tackles, and the more I've kind of dove into him and I've learned about him, he's a really interesting guy to me. He's a guy apparently with like amazing football character. Brock Hewitt was actually telling a story. He does these on the radio where he was doing like a coaches meeting, and the defensive coordinator at USC stopped the meeting to just show them the stuff Tuli was doing in practice, and they had film. And Brock said like nobody does that on those production meetings. So, and the Seahawks do need those 3-4 end types, and I think he's a really interesting player because he can rush the passer too, and I think he's got upside in that sense. So he's a guy I didn't really focus on because I was kind of finding either the pass rushing ends like Felix and Ojulari are really interesting guys that I know Nathan and Derek liked that I've kind of started diving into a little more. But Tuli in that 3-4 end is a guy that's kind of jumped out, and I kind of like him.
Tuli Pulotu is who you're talking about from USC. I think that's a great one. Nathan, this is
Wait.
from.
I want to address the chat for a minute here.
Oh yeah, what's going on?
People in here are saying that there's no way that John likes. If you look at like completion percentage, or he doesn't like a guy that went 9 for 27 in his last game. John Schneider tried to trade the greatest player in Seahawks history, Russell Wilson, for the number 1 pick to go get Josh Allen. So no, that was Baker actually, wasn't it? Was it Baker that he wanted?
No, he wanted Josh Allen.
It was Josh Allen. Okay, all right.
Yeah, it was Josh Allen.
Josh Allen completed 56% of his passes for 1,800 yards in his senior year at Wyoming. Do not tell me that John Schneider is scared of Anthony Richardson's completion percentage. Like, can we just chill, guys? Like,
one of the least accurate prospects we've ever seen.
He traded the equivalent of a 2nd-round pick to go get Charlie Whitehurst. Don't tell me what John Schneider does or doesn't like in a quarterback.
Yeah,
Drew Lock.
Drew Lock.
Yeah. Drew Lock is John Schneider is smitten. There's no doubt.
Let's take a minute to think about what John Schneider likes. I think he's pretty flexible.
All the more reason to just not do quarterback, guys. Don't do it. Don't do it. I'm putting that out there. So, Brendan Light asks Nathan, with the number 20 pick, would you rather a 5 technique like Adi out of Northwestern, or an edge like Will McDonald?
Which pick?
The 20th pick.
I mean, I always just equivocate on all these questions, but like, it depends on what they did at 5, right? If they drafted Will Anderson, give me Ade. If they drafted Jalen Carter, give me McDonald, right? If they didn't draft either, I probably prefer. I mean, that's tough. I think I would do Ade, but I like McDonald a lot too, so I wouldn't be sad either way there.
I would be pretty bummed if they are picking Adebawari at 20. That is way too rich for me. I think the guy is a combine. I know that you were just answering the question, so this isn't a response to you. I'm just responding to the proposed candidate here. I don't want to see his name called until the 2nd round, if at all. He's a workout warrior who has limited impact on the field. I think he has potential and is exciting and interesting, but he's like a tertiary or worse option for me. If they're picking his name, I'm pretty, especially if it's at 20, I'm sweating. I'm not liking that.
No, I mean, I don't really think of either of those guys at 20, but if I'm going to do it, I would probably just swing with the upside that Ade has. But yeah, I mean, I don't think there's much question that McDonald is a better player. I just don't know that he has quite the same.
Well, that was my I attempted some spicy takes last night, and every spicy take I threw out there, everyone's like, that's not spicy. I totally agree. When I try to be like chalk and nice, people are like, what the hell are you talking about? And they argue with me. And then I put out these things that I think are against what people think. But like Will McDonald, he's a guy that's grown on me a lot. And to me, after Will Anderson, it goes Will McDonald at the edge. I think there's a drop off after that. So I see that he's too lean. That's Jaden and chat about that. I know how small he is. I think that guy can put on weight. I think he actually, if you look at the tape, they played him inside at 235. He was taking on guards and he did pretty well, and he's tough and he plays the run pretty well. I would take him over Tyree Wilson. And I wouldn't really I'm putting that out there, and I'll be, I don't think that's spicy.
That's spicy.
I think that's reasonably spicy. I think he's going to be a better player than Tyree Wilson.
Ade is a better player than Nolan Smith.
I'm not talking. Wait, is that?
Are you talking about Nolan? Are you talking about? Nolan
I'm talking about Will McDonald.
Oh, Will McDonald. Oh. Sorry, I read something about Nolan Smith in the chat.
Yes, not talking about Nolan Smith. Yes, he is much more a roll of the dice.
I like McDonald a lot. He's a good player.
Yeah.
Indy.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah.
Cool. All right, Jeff. Okay. Jonathan Lele asked a question related to others. How much money is our crew willing to bet that the Seahawks don't take a quarterback at 5?
How much money? My money or someone else's?
Your money. I will
Money?
add to this pot. If you're willing to bet. If you don't want to bet, then you say 0. But I will put some money on this.
I'd probably bet like $2,000.
$2,000?
Yeah.
Jesus, dude. I was like thinking like $100.
I'm not buying the quarterback.
Wow. Is that real?
Yeah, I think I'd be that comfortable. I'm not buying it. I think.
Okay.
Man, I want to see. We need to have Jeff on camera when Anderson and Carter are both gone,
dude.
And
so
you have to sweat out whether Schneider's going to take Richardson or Levis.
Here's what I want to do, though. So I'm going to give you the chance to rethink because you may not know what you're signing up for. What I'd like us to do is come up with each of our numbers, and this is the amount that we will donate to a charity of our choosing if they don't pick a quarterback. And you can say 0. It doesn't make you a bad person. If you don't think it's going to happen, no, it doesn't. Then I want to put that number out. And in order for this bet to happen, there has to be another side. So Jonathan Lele and anyone else on Real Hawk Talk Slack, if you want to put up money that they will draft a quarterback, we will have money going to charity either way. So I would say, like, if I'm willing to put money that they will not draft a quarterback.
Okay, so my fiance would kill me if I put up $2,000.
I was going to say, dude, you got a wedding coming up. Let's think about that.
There goes my next trip to Seattle. So
yeah,
let's go 200.
$200.
Yeah.
Okay. I will put up 500. Which mainly just to indicate how certain I am that they're not going to draft a quarterback. Nathan, where are you on this? Are you going to come down on the putting money that they won't or that they will?
I'm still queasy from Jeff just casually saying $2,000.
I was like, whoa.
Yeah. Remind me never go to Vegas with Jeff.
Terrible idea.
Ooh, that was cold-blooded. I'll go $200 that they don't draft a quarterback.
Okay. So I love that. That gets us to $900 that they will not draft a quarterback. This is on video. We will see if anyone else on the Real Hawk Talk crew wants to join in on this bet. And then we will follow up in Slack. The only way, just to be clear, the only way that this is a real bet is if there's someone on the other side that will donate if they do draft a quarterback. Okay. So got to be on Real Hawk Talk Slack to participate in this bet and get bragging rights that you will continually be able to return to. Okay. Oh, more questions. I'm going to come for a couple more guys, and then I have a couple questions for you as well. I think I'm back to Nathan. Forgive me if I'm wrong there, but this is Perry. What position do you think we'll draft first, a wide receiver or running back? This is so hard for Nathan. I loved asking him this question.
I do think it'll be a receiver.
I do too.
Yeah.
Jeff, Jason Keffer, which of the following players are still with the team in 2024? Okay. Not this coming season, but the next year. Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs, Tyler Lockett, Geno Smith, Will Dissly. Which of those are still on the team in 2024?
Geno, Lockett, and Quandre.
Interesting. Okay.
There's an important clarifying question in the chat. Our bet, is that for drafting a QB at 5 or the first or at all?
Yes, this is at 5.
5.
Okay. 5. This is at 5.
I didn't actually catch that either. I should probably know what I'm doing before I just throw $200 on a bet, but
I respect it. You know, it's going to a good place. Cool. We're gonna do rapid fire here. Nathan Braxton asks, "What's the worst move, non-move, the Seattle's front office has made during this particular offseason?"
Bobby Wagner is probably the worst move.
You're such Such a troll. I know you're serious too. I know you're
Yeah.
serious. Okay, I'm not going to argue with you about it. Jeff, Max Brightbarth asks, Brightbarth, I should say, asks, which current players on the defensive line are you most excited about for 2023? I think he means that are on the roster.
On the defensive, does that include like the linebackers, the edge guys?
No.
God, Jermon Jones is the only one.
Yeah.
Jermon Jones is like actually an ascending good player. It's not a great player, but I'm excited to see them have a good pass rushing 3 technique. They haven't had that in a while. And Shelby Harris was fine. He did some nice things, but like Jermon Jones is like an ascending good player. And it's certainly not Jaron Reed or Miles Adams.
Not Jaron Reed. Yeah.
Brian Mullaney coming off an ACL. I'm thrilled.
No.
Jalen Carter.
Matt D asks, Nathan, which returning Seahawks player do you think will exceed expectations in 2023?
Geno Smith.
I love that. I'm with you. All right. Okay. I love this question from Gargom. I also love that name, Gargom. Jeff, what position or positions would you like the Seahawks to double up on in this draft?
Interior defensive line. And interior offensive line.
Yes, correct.
I don't know if that counts. I don't know if guard or center counts.
Okay. Thank you for all the patron questions. I know we didn't get to all of them. Those were fantastic questions. You can also ask us questions at patreon.com/hawkblogger. Sign up right now. Get immediate access to the Slack channel. And you too can ask us questions that we will try to answer next week on the pod. Because I also contribute in all sorts of ways, I get to ask whatever questions I want all the time. It's a lot of fun. It's one of the things I love about this job. So, or non-job as the case may be. Guys, there's a couple scenarios we haven't really talked about because I don't think we really necessarily want to talk about them. But I want to know, everyone's assuming, right? The assumption right now is that Will Anderson is the only defensive player that could be likely, maybe Tyree Wilson, but like essentially we're thinking that one defensive player will be picked before the Seahawks, right? That in the top 4 picks. In a scenario where Will Anderson and Jalen Carter both go in the top 4 picks, and I'm adding this other caveat because I don't want this simple to draft a quarterback. And let's say the Seahawks do not want to draft a quarterback. We just bet $900 that they're not going to draft a quarterback at number 5. What do they do? Jeff, I'm coming to you first.
I think they trade out of 5. I think they could go to 7. I think they can go to 9. Philly could move up. I think for them to stay at 5, it's got to be one of Carter or Anderson, unless I'm just misreading this Tyree Wilson thing completely. But I think they move down somewhere at the bottom of the top 10, and they take a different defensive lineman that we'll all probably be annoyed by.
Nathan? Yeah, I think that's probably right. Yeah, I think that they trade down for sure, and it'd be interesting to see what they can manage to get at that point when teams know that they probably don't want to be there at all. But I mean, they've spent a lot of this offseason trying to put a lot of legitimacy behind the idea that they don't want a quarterback, or they could want a quarterback. I mean,
if they, to your point though, if 2 quarterbacks end up available there instead of 1, the potential becomes less about, well, do we think the Seahawks are going to trade for him or pick him? It's more about, are there multiple teams trying to get up to get that player, and then you could potentially get additional capital. So if that happened, I don't think it's likely. If that happened, that would probably be the most likely thing that they would do. question of the week, almost every week leading up to this draft. And I think I know both of your answers for this, but assuming Will Anderson goes before the Seahawks pick, which still seems likely, assuming that the other 3 picks are quarterbacks, where are you on Jalen Carter? Is this an easy hand in the card? Are you thinking about something else? Is it like you're in that position 10 times? How many times are you picking Jalen Carter?
Somebody has to really blow me away with an offer at that point, I think. Like the Raiders offering, next year's first, or the Falcons doing something like that, where you can legitimately think I will get a top 10 pick this year for, and next year. The only thing that concerns me with Carter is the workout. Like, the legal stuff seems to be resolved, and from like a moral perspective too, like a lot of the stuff that looked really kind of gross for him seemed to have been cleared up, and he probably didn't do anything especially egregiously terrible there, as awful as that situation was. So I think a lot of the criticism of his play and his time at Georgia is pretty silly, honestly. I don't think there's anything to it. He did everything he was asked for. He was not put in a position to rack up stats or, inflate his draft stock. Like, he was asked to do dirty work, and was still an incredibly productive, disruptive, impactful player for years. Like, this is a guy that in the last draft we were saying that if he came out, he would have been the first Georgia defensive player taken. And I don't think he did anything last year to change your mind on that. So, the only concerning thing is that he had a really, really, really terrible workout, and it was a really important workout. And even with all the other stuff going on in his life at the time, which you can kind of, say, hey, kind of obvious that he might not have been super into it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was a really, really important workout for him.
Yeah.
But I'm just gonna I would bet that the Seahawks and all the NFL teams have a lot of information on him from Georgia, from the staff and everyone there, and I'm gonna guess it's all pretty raving. So I'm not scared of taking Carter at 5 at all. I'm less sure of it than I was, but I'm not scared of it.
Jeff, are you getting more confident that that's the right pick, or are you getting less confident? You the same? Where are you trending?
I have a hard time with this one. It's because on the field, if you're purely judging it on the field, to me, I agree with a lot of what Nathan said in terms of just like a lot of the on-field concerns where like snap count and his conditioning. That doesn't bother me as much because they had a rotation there of Devontae Wyatt and Jordan Davis and him. He hasn't really been built up into a guy who's been playing like that. But to me, the questions are that's all off field. And the more I've kind of dug into this, I've heard just a lot of things about like their concerns about kind of people he hangs around with, the family's concerns. How much does he care about football? How much things like that, where I don't have the complete picture. I don't feel comfortable judging someone. So if they feel comfortable enough to pick him, I'm all in. I'm totally confident with that because I think the on-field stuff is great. And hand in glove, he's exactly what this team needs. We've been saying it for years. Not only just because they don't have the body to interior defensive line, just they kind of disrupt her. You pair him and Draymond Jones, that becomes a totally position of strength that they just didn't have anything close to last year. So it's hard for me to get away from that because all the concerns are just questions I don't have the answers to. So it all comes down to their off-field evaluation. I feel wrong just saying like, there's no way I want this guy. I don't have those answers, and I can dig around. But the more you talk to his teammates, you'll probably hear how great of a guy he is. You talk to certain people, you might hear differently. So to me, it's all about their character off-field evaluation because there are stories going around, whether Todd McShay or just talking about, they were like, he called it like there was a day at Georgia where they didn't know when like if he was. And it's just so different to the kind of guys the Seahawks have had success with, like Sherman, how they were wired and how much they loved football, and Doug and all these guys. But God, his talent is so good, and he's the best. I think he's the best player in this draft in terms of just film. So
Yeah.
if they draft him, I'm all in. I'm comfortable with it. I just don't see the great alternative there. If there's no Carter, no Anderson. Like, you really want Lucas Van Ness at 9, and there's your first round pick from Denver. Like, ugh.
Yeah. Here's the thing for me, fellas. I am at the point where it is very clear he's the pick at 5 if that's the way the draft falls. And I think it's because there's no other player that you could have in this scenario that we're talking about that has the upside potential. Again, I think that folks can argue about Anthony Richardson, and I totally get that and understand why people have that point of view. But Jalen Carter has massive, massive upside. That's just clear. That no one's arguing that. And he also has just real bust potential. Like, he has the potential to be, out of the league in a few years because he's not motivated or he's not in shape or whatever else. That's totally possible. And Jeff, I don't know if you heard this, but I was listening to Brady Henderson on one podcast. I think it was with Mitch Levy potentially, but he was talking about that he's seen with the Seahawks. He would be a player top 30 visits where players top 30 visits have not like made them as far as picks that they would take, but he has seen situations where it has eliminated players. And he talked about a defensive player that came to the VMAC and was like on his phone, low energy, not super into what was going on. And he was off their board. He was going to be like an early round pick and was just off their board. And what he did at that workout is so antithetical to the way that they value players. One of my bigger fears is not that they take Jalen Carter at 5, but that they pass on him because he doesn't meet their bar, which I think is a legitimate thing to be concerned about. And we end up watching him go to another team and figure it out while we're stuck with Tyree Wilson or Van Ness or one of these other things that I just don't see real like star potential in. And so that's a concern I have about a scenario that could really be developing. Is very realistic with this team.
I heard
hear something positive, like really, really positive to counteract what happened in that workout.
Yeah, I heard an ex-GM the other day. He was on a podcast. I can't remember who it was. It was either Rick Spielman or something like that. Said they still lose sleep because they passed on Warren Sapp for the same kind of things. It was off the field. A lot of it back then, it was a lot of like marijuana issue, and obviously that was looked at so differently in the mid '90s than it is now. But it haunts you, and it's the kind of thing like you can, or like Laramie Tunsil fell to 13th because that stupid gas mask bong. I'm like, how fucking stupid was that in hindsight? That's one of the best, the highest paid player in the league at his position, and like that has to haunt all these teams. And Warren Sapp is a guy fell, and then Randy Moss fell in the draft for the same. He's troubled off the field, first ballot Hall of Fame, best receiver of his generation, probably. It's like, yeah, for that, there's a lot of validity to that.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are people in the chat that are like thinking of all the examples the other ways of guys that had these red flags and flamed out. But to me, like, there just isn't anyone else close. Like, if you're choosing between Will Anderson and Jalen Carter, 3 months ago, I would have given you a different answer. I would have said Carter. But today it's Anderson because I think there's enough questions. But if you're not choosing between those two, there's just no one else that's close enough to scare me away from taking the chance.
I have one more question for you guys. Am I keeping you too late? You still got a little more time? You good?
No.
All right. Let's assume for a situation, one of the popular rumors going on is the Titans are going to trade into the 3rd pick, and they're doing it because there's a quarterback. They want to move on from what they've had in Tannehill and upgrade. So let's assume it goes chalk with 1st and 2nd pick. 2 quarterbacks go. 3rd pick, another quarterback goes, and Indy is sitting there at 4. How confident are you that Indy just takes the 4th quarterback? Like, give me a percentage chance that are we in that situation thinking, oh, Will Anderson is definitely going to fall to us? Or are we thinking what?
I got smacked by Jeff in the group chat a couple months ago for insinuating that Indy might go any other direction than a quarterback. So I have been chastised, and I will be 100% confident that we are getting Will Anderson back.
No, I want you to get chastised again. Come on.
No, I learned my lesson.
Jeff?
My neurotic tendencies make me very scared about that situation. But like, if you heard Jim Irsay talk at the owners' meetings when like the Lamar Jackson situation was coming up, he had every reason to just like talk about Lamar. He was just talking about how bad they need to draft a quarterback. And it's one of the things in sports. I think if it was just a normal general manager and there was no owner or a hands-off owner, I think it's probably like 50-50, 60% they take Will Anderson. But like, it's a weird situation there where like Chris Ballard's missed on quarterbacks like since Andrew Luck's retired. They've cycled through. I think they're on their 8th or 9th starting quarterback, and this guy's about to get fired if he doesn't get a quarterback right. So unless they love Hendon Hooker and he's willing to bet his job security on Hendon Hooker, it's just a unique situation where they went Matt Ryan, Wentz. They all flamed out. And Jim Irsay was furious that they traded for Wentz, and he forced them out. And now they got this top 5 pick because of the whole Jeff Saturday tank thing. Like, they're gonna have to lock him like in the other room, like to not have him force the quarterback there. So I'm pretty confident the Colts would take a quarterback, but like if that moment's going on, I'm going to be sweating like crazy. I'm going to be sweating that out.
Here's the thing, boys. My confidence is less than 50% that they go quarterback. Here's what I think happens in that situation. I think, one, they will try to see if Seattle wants to trade up. And I think it's a legitimate question for us about whether Seattle would and should consider moving up one spot and potentially giving up one of their second-round picks to do it. Like, that would be like probably the price. That's something that they would ask. And if Seattle's not interested in doing that, you don't think that the Lions or one of the teams right behind the Seahawks, like a couple picks, the Lions especially, might be interested in trading up to 3, and then they fall back to 6, and they still get their quarterback because Seattle's not going to pick them. And they get more picks as a result. Like, there's almost I want to believe that they're going to just go Levis no matter what, if that's the 4th quarterback.
The one thing that would have to scare the Colts if they did try that trade back from 4 to 6 is Seattle can get on the phone with the Raiders. And then that Jackson, like if they have a directive to get a QB, that puts them at serious risk. And that would actually be a pretty sweet scenario for Seattle, I think, because you'd think the Raiders would be pretty incentivized at that point.
Yeah, and the Colts were the real big losers of that Carolina move up because the Colts were really positioned. Everyone thought they were going to be the team to jump to 1, and they were just going from 4 to 1, so it wouldn't have cost nearly as much. And Carolina jumping them, basically, if Houston does take a quarterback, that meant at best they're getting their 3rd guy. Or the 3rd best quarterback by most consensus boards. So another jump up somewhere, or like them moving back down, like Nathan said, like they've already been the losers of this kind of offseason now, where the only thing they've done is add Gardner Minshew. And if they don't get one of these 4 guys, you got to trade up from probably 35 to get Hendon Hooker. And that's a hard thing to sell your fan base when you just whiffed on Wentz and you whiffed on Matt Ryan, and Phillip Rivers played 1 year, and that owner's he's heavy-handed.
Well, here's the thing. I think that they're also in a really difficult position. Everyone's like, oh, they'll trade up to the Cardinals because they don't have to trade much to get up to the. If I'm the Cardinals, I'm not looking to trade down one spot and just get a little bit. Like, I'm looking for a haul. Yeah. And if someone else is offering me a haul and moving back to like 6, 7, 8, I'm way more interested in that. And so you're going to have to probably give up similar amounts just to move up one spot. Like, I think you're going to have to give up a premium to move up one spot. I don't know if they're going to want to do it. I don't know if the Cardinals would be happy enough with what they're offering. And it has to be that the Cardinals really just want Will Anderson and want to stick there and get him. So I think there's a decent shot that Cardinals pick goes to someone other than the Colts, and that they are going to be in this position of 4 out of 4. Unless they can convince, a Houston to switch with them or something like that.
You don't see teams give up.
I don't think that'll happen.
Yeah.
So like, I think the Colts are in a tough spot. I hope to God they're stupid and just take whatever quarterback's there. That would be great. But it's a scenario, man. It's going to be so fascinating that night for sure. I can't wait. All right. I know it's late. I'm going to do a mock draft. Anyone that wants to stick around, feel free to do that. If either of you guys need to drop, feel free to do that. I'm going to do a 3-round mock. Would love to have your perspectives on that.
While you're getting that fired up, there are a few people in the chat talking about Jalen Carter's snap count.
Yes.
Which is, it doesn't concern me at all. So 2 years ago, Carter had 20 fewer snaps than Devontae Wyatt and 20 more snaps than Jordan Davis. So he didn't have 400 snaps. He's only had he's never hit 400 snaps in a season with Georgia. But like the way that Georgia is playing these guys is like, that's not a thing really. That's not a concern. And you can say, oh well, this year their defense isn't as stacked and he only played 300 snaps. Well, yes, he also missed 3 games because he was hurt. And he was still just 40 snaps behind Michael Williams, number 2. And the number 1 guy on the Georgia defensive line, Nazir Stackhouse, played 419 snaps. Again, just like, 20 more than Carter played last year. So this idea that like he can't stay on the field, he doesn't play many snaps in a game. I mean, defensive linemen rotate a lot. Georgia especially rotates their defensive linemen a lot. Now he had a crappy workout that he couldn't finish, and that certainly like plays up that concern for sure. But I just don't think, it's that big a deal. I may have said Carter's Snapchat. I wouldn't know anything about that.
Ooh, okay, love that. I'm going to, for the sake of doing something different, we are going to move the Titans into the Cardinals spot for this draft. Okay. So wait, where is it that I can? I know I can
drag and drop. Yeah.
I thought I could. Hold on. Why is it not moving? Let me refresh.
Maybe you have to select all the teams.
There's usually like some place where I can say edit order. Maybe it's not going to let me do this.
Go to see where that little toggle is where it says select all. Let's see if you can move it there.
No, that's who I'm picking. It usually is somewhere right around here. Darn it. Well, teams are listed with the first pick. Does not seem to let me change it. Okay, well, we will pick the Seahawks and we will enter the draft and we'll just go. Okay. Too bad. So what we could do, we'll try to actually control this here, and I'll make some changes here. All right. So Panthers are on the clock. They pick Bryce Young. Texans are on the clock. They're going to let them pick. They pick CJ Stroud. Okay. I don't think I can control. Dang it.
Damn.
All right. We'll just let it go. Actually, I'm too stubborn. We're gonna do this. Hold on. We're gonna control both of the Titans and the Cardinals.
There you go. That's the loophole.
And we're gonna make this trade. Okay. So here we go again. Boom, boom. Oh, a little bit different. Anthony Richardson goes. Now we are going to trade. What's that?
Now they're definitely trading that.
Yes. So now Titans are offering the 11th pick, round 1 next year. I don't even care what they offer. Sure. Fine. That's done. All right. So then draft a player. We're going to give them CJ Stroud in this. Okay.
Yep.
So now the Colts are on the clock. And the Colts take time. No way.
You broke the algorithm.
No way. But the point is, they didn't take Will Levis, did they?
Nope. In
So,
the end, the
I
Raiders
mean-
will probably take him, and they could have taken Tyree. So it's the same thing.
Okay, but what are we doing here, guys? I think we all just agreed, right? Will Anderson. Yes?
Yeah, I think you have to.
All right. So we've got Will Anderson. Gonna go through this. We're gonna move this a little faster now. Oh, and the Cardinals are on the clock. We'll just take
Give him
Quentin
Quentin
Johnson.
Johnson.
Yeah, why not? Whatever. They've probably traded DeAndre Hopkins by now.
Do we lose Brian? We lost Brian.
Steelers. The Steelers broke Brian again.
Again? Oh, I guess that's probably true.
Oh. Well, this should make some good content. Damn.
So, Jeff, if you're the Steelers here, who are you taking?
I can't even see the board.
Nolan Smith at 15 would be an upset, I think.
Brian's texting me. His power went out. He's restarting. So, yeah, I guess like there. Are you at 20? Are you looking defensive tackle to pair with Anderson? Are you looking receiver? This is where
JSN and Quentin Johnson are both gone, so receiver doesn't feel very good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're not taking Will McDonald because you got Anderson already.
Is Cansey there?
Cansey will probably be there. I know Brian's got a hard on for him.
Yeah. But like he is not a guy that solves your nose problem.
No, you're kind of small if you take Anderson and Cansey.
Yeah. Well, Anderson would play outside linebacker and Cansey would play end, right?
Cansey play inside.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Brian will bring up the board. We're going to have to do that all over again. But that's why the Carter thing works so well. It really opens up the rest of the draft.
Carter?
Yeah, I think that's the best part of Carter. I think you take him at 5, you just have your optionality at 20 is way better. And you don't feel like defensive tackle is not being addressed because you really turned it into a position of strength. And you can still add that nose later. And I think it does create a better scenario at 20 and even 37.
Yeah, because Cansey at 20 feels a little like I don't know for sure he'll be there. So if you get Anderson at 5 and you want to like, again, I don't think any of the nose tackles feel good at 20.
No, it feels like a reach.
Cansey would, but you mean I don't know. Not that Carter solves your nose tackle problem either. Although I mean he can 2-gap and stuff, so like, but I don't think you want to play nose.
No, but at least you have some numbers on the interior defensive line, and
yeah,
then you can maybe add Woods in or another pick later, and just the group just feels so much better. 20, you could look at Ojulari, you could look at Felix, or hope one of those guys makes it to 37.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Oh no.
Nope. Yeah,
I'm here.
Okay.
Sorry, boys. My power went out with no warning. So we're gonna try this one more
get that
time.
trade too.
The draft got restarted, so we will try this one more time. It's possible my computer will decide that it can't handle it anyway, but let's try this. Okay, we're gonna have to do this one more time. Cardinals, Seahawks, Titans. We'll go 2 rounds just to be aggressive here. We're gonna move fast. Bryce Young and CJ Stroud now have gone.
Yeah.
We're going to trade with the Titans. Am I missing the Titans?
Did we lose Brian again?
I had to say it. No, he said he switched. Yep, we lost him again. This is going to be our best show. They really don't like this Titans Cardinals trade. He just texted me. He's switching computers. Maybe that's the thing. We need John Schneider's internet working on draft day. But
there was that year. I mean, the COVID year, right? Everyone was drafting from home. Belichick was letting his dog draft.
Yeah, that was true. Well, hopefully wherever the Seahawks are drafting from, they have good internet. I've been victim of bad internet too many times on this show. So now that it's happening to you, it's happening to Brian. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
It's bizarro world now. But yeah, I guess we'll try to get this mock going. Thanks for everyone for sticking with us. It's almost we're almost at 2 hours tonight. And we're trying to get this mock draft done. Everyone loves the mock drafts, but Brian's going to a new computer. He had a power outage. And every time he tries to act like the Cardinals, something happens in his house.
Oh man, the truth as I know it in the chat tried to make a comment about Al Woods, but there was a typo and said Al Woos. I don't know why. That's really funny to me.
That's awesome.
Al Woos.
That's a much better name.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
My God, guys, can anybody have a worse situation on
Are you sure you should
we've
be
had
betting $500 on what Seattle will draft when you apparently can't pay your energy bills?
You know what happened is I have my personal MacBook and then my work one, and the personal one it just was running down on batteries, and apparently it doesn't even matter. But Mac needs to do something about the fact that you can plug your power into one of its peripherals and it's not actually charging. And it's just
but every time you try to act like the Cardinals, something blows up in your house.
Yeah. So this computer is fully charged. This will not happen. I am confident we are going to get through this one. I promise. And if we don't get through it, I will double my bet on the Seahawks.
You'll cover mine.
Okay. So let's do this one more time. We will get through this. I promise. Titans. Let's go. Start. We get to the Cardinals. Bryce Young, CJ Stroud are gone. We are going to trade with the. Where are the Titans?
This is deja vu.
Oh no!
Oh my God, he's gone. No, he's not. Okay.
I'm here.
He's not moved.
It's not even giving us the Titans as an option, which I don't get.
What?
Let's what's another team that would trade up?
Your team? Are you sure? Are you on the wrong drop down? There's not another drop down.
It's not a team to trade with.
Right. Your team is Arizona. It should be showing up here. It's not. So let's pick another team that would want to
draft a quarterback.
How about the Commanders?
Well, why don't we just draft a quarterback for Arizona
and pretend?
Fine. Good enough. That's a good way to do it. We'll pretend that they are the Titans.
Yeah,
they taking Anthony Richardson?
Yeah.
Right. Love that. Good solution. Okay.
There it is.
And there is what we were just talking about. So are we handing in the card for Jalen Carter?
Yeah.
Well,
Nathan's hesitating.
Yeah,
I'm handing in the card for Jalen Carter. What are you doing?
Takes Carter at 6. I feel pretty stupid.
Yeah.
They're very likely to do that.
Yeah. Although, isn't their secondary god awful?
They made a lot of moves in the offseason.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Carter it is. Tennessee, whatever. They're taking Quentin Johnston. I don't even know. All right. So now we are at 20.
This is so funny because while you were gone, we were talking about how Carter makes things so much easier because if you take Anderson at 5, then you're kind of in a weird spot where you're if you want another defensive lineman, you're just hoping that Kancey gets there. In this case, we got Carter, and Cansey is sitting here.
Right.
So that's unfortunate.
Are you interested in Cansey, Nathan?
I don't hate it at 20. I don't love him, but like I get he's a guy that I would not personally want to bet on, but
right.
When he turns out to be awesome, I'm not going to be surprised.
Yeah. I get that. That all makes sense. I wasn't sure if you were like short arm off my list kind of guy.
I mean, he is so short armed.
He's got really short arms, dude. Like they're kind of like just hands attached to his shoulders.
He just has little flippers.
he's just That should be his nickname, is like the walrus or something.
Little flippers. That should be his nickname.
So what did they do here, guys? We now have historical information. They've drafted. Do they I will tell you, I'm more like it's these three actually right in a row.
So do you draft here or do you move down?
I mean, that's really probably the thing that John does here. But I mean, the 20th pick is really just, it says everything about the person making the pick, right? And so I think if we put a poll up, we would get a split among 10 different players probably.
Let's do this based. What do we think the Seahawks will do? Not who we want. Who do we think the Seahawks would pick? If they've picked Jalen Carter, let's assume for a second that we've just made that decision for them. Who do they pick here?
I do think I am a little stuck on the idea of taking a tight end and trading Noah Fant and using that cap space on a nose tackle.
You think that that's the most likely thing that they would do?
I think the most likely thing that they will do is probably trade down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Let's take a look at the trade offers. I think that's most likely in this situation.
Fine. The guy I wanted the most was Mayer, but I think that's probably the scenario I would have picked them the least to do.
Okay. Actually, I think this is an interesting one we haven't looked at yet. Can you get 28 and 60 for...
Yeah.
PFF thinks so. Seems steep. I don't think you actually... It's 8 picks. Yeah, I don't know.
Would you do that trade?
Yeah.
Me Jeff?
Too. Yeah.
Yeah? All right, let's just do it, even though we could probably get more. Let's try to keep it a little bit realistic. All right. So
they take Bijan? Is that what they did?
They took Deontay Banks, cornerback.
Did Bijan go right before it or something? I thought Bijan.
Yeah.
Bijan went at 19.
Okay.
So Mayer's gone. Zay Flowers is gone. Cansey's still there. Will McDonald's there. I'll tell you guys, I think that Will McDonald's a Seahawk here. Not just because I really like him. I think if they went defensive tackle in that first pick and they've got an edge guy sitting here, edge is the position that they've spent more draft capital on than any other position. We can debate which edge, but I would guess that this would be an edge in this situation.
I don't hate it. I mean, I do like Ojolari better.
Okay, let's talk about that for a second. Jeff, do you have any strong preference between these two guys?
No, I like Ojolari quite a bit, but I think McDonald's juice off the edge. They'd want to pair with Carter.
6'2", 248, and for the people that like to know how light Will McDonald is, 6'3", 239. So he's
basically 4 years older, right?
Yeah, 20. That's one of the things with McDonald. He's definitely older. Not
that the Seahawks have ever cared about that.
No.
Yeah, they had that 25-year-old guy in the other day. So
yeah. Okay. Do you guys have a preference of what you think? What do you think is more Seahawky, McDonald or Ojolari?
McDonald.
All right, McDonald it is. All right, we don't care. We're gonna take a tackle, Anton Harrison. Sure. All right. So we have our edge and we have our interior.
But this is why I don't like taking an edge there. Actually,
they're all still there.
Yeah. I mean, now again, it's easy to fall into a trap here and think that PFF is this is real, right? If Ojolari, McDonald, and Felix all go in the first round, I won't be surprised. And same for DeJuan Jones, actually. So I don't know that, these guys will actually be just sitting here. But if this is really how it kind of shakes out, like there are just too many good edge options for Seattle at 37 for me to want McDonald or somebody higher up.
Well, I'll tell you, actually, like thinking back, I still think that I whatever reason, I think they'll take Schmitz at that spot at 28 in that situation. I think they'll go center.
Yeah, the PFF simulators don't have him like that, but I think just the numbers, I think I agree.
So do we take him here if we think that he would have been taken there?
Well, who else is on the board if you scroll down a little more?
All right. Yeah.
Thule, we don't need.
Definitely some corners. They still got a tight end here.
Who go tight end? There's Musgrave or Laporta.
Drew Sanders is pretty interesting, dude.
Cody Mouch.
You've got by the way, Cody Mouch.
In the chat earlier said that Cody Mouch looks like me on Bosley. I'm still a little shook by it.
Oh, come on.
I
have
that,
all
man.
of my teeth, though.
That's
so
hard.
that Cody
By
Mouch.
the way, there's some talk of him being potential at a center spot. I've read and heard as well.
So he would be a guard for you.
He'd be a guard, most likely. Here's the guy I don't like.
Is it Charbonnet time?
No way. I don't. Even if I'm putting my Seahawks hat, I don't think they will use a high second.
You're
round
right.
pick.
I feel like the McDonald pick ruined this mock draft. Like I feel gross about this now.
There's a guy that could be. Yeah. What would be the Seahawks pick here? I think receiver we haven't got, and that's a position that they.
That's what I'm saying before. When Josh Downs goes,
yeah, there's just really like you got Tank
That's
Dell,
what I
like
said,
you really
Nick
get
Dell,
like Jalen
Jalen
Hyatt.
Hyatt.
They could reach on Jalen Hyatt.
he's such a one.
They do love. I mean, Hyatt didn't even run fast, though, did he?
No, and he's a
He's
one
supposed to
trick
be-
pony in a joke fake offense. He's young.
Didn't he run like a 4.5, 4.49 or something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
So
he's a
like I was
third
gonna say,
rounder.
yeah, and they do love speedsters. So like I actually wonder if like Tank Dell, like do they keep trying this like Philip
So
Dorsett, D. Eskridge, Marquise Goodwin?
Yeah.
I don't know. Can we restart this draft?
I think they go center. I think they would have gone center already. I would say that we just flip it and assume that they would have picked an edge here if they didn't pick a center there.
Fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
How big is this Mouch dude? He
He's
looks
pretty
fucking
big.
wild.
He's a big dude.
And they think he's a center?
He could play
Oh,
center.
he played center like a couple snaps at the Senior Bowl. I think he's more of a guard.
2.4 or 24. Girl.
He's like the Jim Nagy, like.
Have you seen his picture? I really like
It's
people
incredible. It's
Oh,
really
yeah.
incredible.
If you haven't looked up Cody Mouch, you should look him up. He is I want him on the team, like for sure. So what are we doing? We doing Schmitz, we doing Tippmann, Whippler, Avila all the way also is a center potential option.
You guys don't like Avila much, though, do you?
I see him as just more of like a more passive pass protector. I don't see him as much of a run blocker. I do like this. I mean, he's a big boy, but I just don't know if I see him as like their kind of like, I wouldn't be upset. I'm not sure I see him as like the guy that they're after in that spot.
All right, let's do Schmitz.
Done.
Give him Tanner McKee.
God. I think that guy's like, I wouldn't even draft Tanner McKee. Like he's like at best like a 6th round pick.
Oh,
to
there
me.
goes
I'm
Cody
so
Mouch.
low on him. I can't believe he's so high in this thing.
All right, so we taking Henley or Dell here?
Ah,
I don't even Sam Laporta. Ooh, Ika.
Ika's still sitting right there, actually.
but that's not who they would pick,
Yeah,
right?
Why not?
We have another pick coming. Don't we have a pick at 60?
You're right. Yes.
Why are they not taking Ika here though?
I mean, they have never drafted a nose tackle, and it's hard for me to see them placing that high of a value on essentially just a run stuffing player, a 2-down player. I want to, like, I would be thrilled. Don't get me wrong. I'm just like, it's hard for me to get there.
Where are you on Laporta?
On who?
The tight end.
Oh, Laporta. That's not a great picture, I'll tell you that.
he's the most plain looking guy.
That guy looks like,
yeah,
I don't know. It looks like maybe he's fun at a party.
22. Oh, okay, so one of the best college tight ends we've graded. That's insane.
People like this guy.
I've never heard of this dude before.
Oh, okay. So let's, like, if they want to do that Noah Fant thing, I think he's the guy there. But I would be more excited about Ika, or I think you can get Del the next pick. But
any chance they look at like Tyreek Stevenson?
Julius Brents is there. I like him better.
Is Julius Brents there?
Yeah, he's 2 picks below.
That could very well be.
Or
if we're not,
I think there's a lot of smoke around
Ika,
him
though, because they don't take nose tackles that high. Are we taking?
Yeah, you're right. The thing is that they've actually valued the cornerback position, but they have not spent this type of capital on it. So I think that's a fair question. All right.
I mean, Tank Dell is the last receiver of any real interest, right?
It's got to be. Yeah, let's see, like Tillman or Jaden Reed. If you had to go,
got Parker that you could get later.
Bingo.
Yeah. Why is he falling? Is he like, he just keeps slipping down and down and down? I don't really get it.
He's had no buzz this entire process. It's been strange. We really liked him.
Yeah, look at this. Woo.
You're right.
He never did run.
He just has no buzz. Yeah, he hasn't. His agent hasn't handled this draft process well.
Who knows what teams think of him, though? I mean, if you're not getting PFF mock draft, but mock draft simulator, but I don't know.
So all right. So you think they should go receiver here? That's what they do?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like there's other stuff available to them at the other positions. So, I mean, unless you think they want a linebacker here with Henley, like Henley and Dell feel like.
Well, so let's remember what Jeff said about 62. So like this is probably the position that has the least amount of guys left. So yeah, maybe they take from this position.
I think Dell would be the pick.
Let's do it. Dell's done. So Henley's going. Keon White's a guy we haven't talked about. I think he's an interesting fit for the Seahawks. They wouldn't necessarily need him after some of this stuff. Tooley's gone.
There's Laporta.
Yeah, Laporta's gone.
Brent's went. It's got to be Ika. Right?
Yeah. So I think that this becomes a possibility.
To go Del Charbonnet. Oh God.
So you guys think that Ika would be their pick in this situation? Oh, Trenton Simpson's available. I feel like that's a real possibility. I can't believe he's fallen. Why is he fallen so much? What's going on there? This guy's a good player.
Pick him up. Bring him home.
Done. All right, that is our draft for the night. Oh, this the Cardinals mock. They didn't like ours.
We're kind of small, like McDonald, Dell, and Simpson.
It's an itty bitty draft.
Yeah, I don't think I feel great about that one.
How do you feel? Yeah, you're not loving it, are you?
We're too small. We got to get bigger.
I don't like
the Seahawks committee.
I don't like this. I'd be pretty excited about the rest of these picks.
Yeah. If you put Ika in there, we feel totally different.
It would. I 100% agree. I don't think you can make the case that this is like, well, I don't know. Maybe it's a significantly tougher team. It's just hard to draft a 160-pound guy and feel like you got tougher.
And McDonald's small.
But you got fast.
You did. You did.
But this is the thing. Like, I think like that Will McDonald pick just jacked the whole draft, at least.
Didn't like it. I love that we tried it. We tried it on. I don't
Because
hate
you could
it.
have taken Michael Meyer there,
Yeah.
and then like Ojolari or Felix or McDonald, and then whatever center you like, Schmitz. You could have done Ika, and then Simpson.
Yeah.
And I think you would have felt great about Meyer over Dell. And so you just like flip that one thing,
Yes.
right?
100%. I
100%.
completely agree.
I
think
the
that
second we did it.
I agree.
We got Jeff, me and you got bullied. Brian, Mr. Hawk Vlogger throwing his weight around.
I don't think this is an unrealistic potential of how the Seahawks would draft. This is not how I would have necessarily done it. Like,
well, hopefully they plan.
I think that they value that edge position. They spent a lot of draft capital on it. To see them get out of the first round with no edge, it's tough. I think it's likely. I think tight end is less likely than center, but I agree that that's the right strategy for sure.
And that's what I'm saying. I think that's the pivot point where 20 rather than when there's that depth at edge. And we talked about how much John Schneider values like position group numbers. That getting the best of something rather than taking something for because you need it. I think that's what makes drafts good, and that's why they draft so well last year.
Well, and you guys are focusing on the tight end. We had 20, and Zay Flowers was sitting there too. So, like, even if it wasn't a tight end, now I happen to think tight end I'd be more interested in because of some of the other reasons that we've talked about, cap and so forth. But if you even switched the draft we had and you had Zay Flowers instead of Tank Dell, it'd still feel small, but I think you could have probably ended up with a pretty similar haul and still felt pretty good about it. But you have to take the receiver or the tight end at 20 or in the 20s to get quality. I think that's the lesson tonight.
Yeah, I think Flowers is just sorry, Nathan, go ahead.
Oh no, go for it.
I was going to say Flowers I just think is a way better compliment than Tank Dell. I know how Flowers wins, and Flowers is like a super like explosive, like almost like a little jitterbug out of the slot. Dell's more of a downfield guy. And that's not really what they need. They have that with Lockett and Metcalf. They need to complement them in the middle of the field and someone who wins quickly. And that's why the whole thing just felt bad.
Yeah.
If Seattle takes McDonald at 20, I'll be saying, EI, oh no. Huh? Get it?
Oh, God. It took me a while, Nathan, but yes, I caught up. All right. Well, thank you to Nathan Ernst at NathanE11. Thank you to Jeff Simmons at Real Jeff Simmons on Twitter. And thanks to everybody that stuck around while my computer turned itself off multiple times because even it was upset about mock draft Thursday. But we got through it. 2 hours plus of Real Hawk Talk this week. And thanks to everyone that tuned in. If you haven't already, give the show a like. Subscribe to the channel. Go to patreon.com/hawkblogger. Sign up right now. Get access to the Slack channel. And we'll continue the conversation there. And we will continue the conversation about the bet that was made around whether the Seahawks will pick a receiver. No, a quarterback at the number 5 pick. $900 from the three of us that they will not take a pick at number 5. They will not take a quarterback at number 5. Eventually, I will get that right. We will see how much money we can actually additionally raise for charity with this bet. Until then, thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your night and week. We will talk to you soon. And if you celebrate, happy Passover, Hag Sameach, and all that good stuff. Take care.